Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Do you know, I have to pinch myself some mornings when I wake up because it's been, as Paul just said, a long 23-year slog. But you know what? It's happening. There's going to be a referendum on June the 23rd. And in many ways, this referendum is our victory. We were the only people talking about this. We were the only people putting it to the electorate time and time again. And suddenly, the world is a bit less lonely than it used to be. Cabinet ministers, people in the Labour Party, people in the trade unions, standing up and saying the same thing we've been saying. Standing up and saying, let's make June the 23rd, 2016, Independence Day. Let's do it. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Leave side being a divided camp. What has not been commented on is the fact that the Remain side, or the Romanians as they're known, oh well, I'll be in trouble again, won't I? But actually, look at the Remain side. You know, there's Nicola Sturgeon saying that David Cameron mustn't come north of the border. Hilary Benn saying he wouldn't share a platform with any Conservatives. And Lord Rose, who still appears to be in winter hibernation. But it is true that there have been some difficulties on our side of the argument. And I have been disappointed and worried that the Vote Leave organisation have just not wanted to work with anybody else or to merge with anybody else. But my real worry was this talk that's been going around of a double referendum. Yeah, you've heard it, the talk of a double referendum, that somehow we should vote in this referendum to leave so that Mr. Juncker gives us a better deal and we then have another referendum to remain. That is not what I want, and I'm certain it's not what you want. And it's wrong. And it is wrong. Because the way to win this referendum is we have to tell the British people that this is the single most important political decision that they will take in their lifetimes, and even if they've never voted before and they never intend to vote again, this is the time to go to the polling station to win back our democratic freedoms and rights as British people. But I think that today is a very, very good day. A very good day, because last Sunday we saw Boris Johnson emerging from his house in North London. And I thought, this is wonderful news. Boris, one of the best known political faces in the country, joining the Leave side. This must be good news. But I was worried. Because he started to talk about a double referendum. But clearly Boris has thought about this over the course of the last week. And in today's Times newspaper, he now totally disowns the concept of a double referendum, says he's in this for the proper fight. He says voting to leave means leave. And I think we should show what good-hearted people we are in UKIP and give Conservative Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, a big cheer for saying that. It's funny what a referendum brings, isn't it? Cheering a Tory, you know, I mean, there you are. I have to say that I've now spoken at the first 3 public events put on by Grassroots Out, Go. And I want to pay tribute to Conservative MPs Peter Bone and Tom Pursglove and the rather magnificent Labour MP Kate Hoey for setting the whole thing up in the first place. I think that to win this referendum, we have to cast aside any previous political differences. You know, whatever's been said in campaigns, whatever's been said about us, we've got to put that behind us. And we need to understand, and perhaps elements of our media need to understand, that we cannot and we will not win this referendum purely from the centre-right of politics in this country. There are millions of old Labour voters out there who are truly patriotic. There are now rumblings within the trade union movement, with people beginning to realise that actually all these fabled rights that come to us from the European Union, really what we've seen are the displacement of British workers and the average wages for Britons being driven down by too much cheap labour coming into Britain from Southern and Eastern Europe. So we must portray this as not being a battle of left and right. It's a battle of right and wrong. It's a battle about who governs our country. That's the message we've got to put out there. Now, of course, the whole referendum is based on Mr. Cameron's renegotiation. You're not very generous-spirited souls this morning, are you? No, I agree with you. I mean, given the high-vaunting ambitions that we heard in that Bloomberg speech 3 years ago, what he came back with was pretty pathetic. But what is worse than that is his quite deliberate attempt to pull the wool over the eyes of the British public by telling us that what he's been granted is legally binding. What did you call the Prime Minister? Well, I find this quite extraordinary, I must say. I'm not going to use that word. But he said, yeah, I know that. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. I might lead the People's Army, but I can't control it. Yeah. Goodness knows I've tried. But this deal is not legally binding because it can be struck down by the European Parliament. It can be ruled out of court by the European Court of Justice, and the people with whom he's made this gentleman's agreement won't even be in their positions in a few years' time. But the most laughable thing is that the Prime Minister said that with this deal, he said, I would now vote to join the European Union. I just thought perhaps we'd try and run through that for a moment. So the Prime Minister gets up in the House of Commons and says, we are going to have a referendum on June the 23rd on whether Britain joins the European Union. There are one or two changes that we're going to need to make. I know that we've governed ourselves for the last 1,000 years, but I tell you what, let's sign up to an organisation who will now make 75% of the laws that we used to make in this Parliament, and let's make the European Court of Justice across Westminster Square redundant, and let's hand over the ultimate law of the land to a court in Luxembourg staffed by people who aren't even judges. That's how it starts. Oh, that's how it starts, and it gets better, doesn't it? It gets better. No longer will we be in charge of managing our steel industry or our financial services sector, and we've decided that, frankly, owning 200 miles of the North Sea for our fishing rights is a bit outdated, so we're going to share it out with the rest of Europe. We will, of course, increasingly have this organisation speaking for us in terms of foreign policy, and any law that is made that we don't like, we can't do a single thing about. And for all of this, the really good news is that it's going to cost us £55 million a day to join the club. I mean, we know what the answer would be. But they're now all lining up behind him. Big businesses, big banks like Goldman Sachs, and big politics. And this week has seen the launch of Project Fear. We've heard in Wales that without membership of the European Union, all agriculture would cease. I thought the Welsh were farming before we joined the common market, but perhaps I'm wrong. We're told in many cases that all trade would stop, that millions of jobs would be at risk, and we've even been told the lie that to have access to the single market, we will have to continue with the free movement of people. I would say that these letters that keep getting sent out from Downing Street, regardless whether the individuals concerned have actually signed them or not, but I would say, thank you for your help. I would say that these letters they're sending out, the mood of the debate this week from the Remain camp, frankly, has been near hysterical. And I think that's good because they're scared of us. Very, very scared of us. And they keep asking. Well, what would out look like? You know, wouldn't it be a very uncertain world, a leap in the dark? The phrases that you've heard this week and that you'll hear continually between now and June the 23rd. Well, let me tell you with total certainty that when we vote to leave this European Union, when we have put through our divorce with this political union, let me tell you with total certainty what out will look like. We will be back in control of our country, and we will be, once again, an independent nation. That is what out looks like. And we will make the rules. We will make the rules that govern our steel industry. We will reclaim our territorial waters and look after our fishing industry. We will set the rules for our financial services industry. And any law that is made by our government and our parliament, we once every 5 years will have the opportunity to vote for a new set of politicians who will get rid of those rules and replace them with their own set of rules. It is called parliamentary democracy, and it is something so precious, it is something so fundamental that those that went before us in the 20th century twice risked and in some cases sacrificed everything that they had to make sure that we, and indeed the rest of Europe, could live as free parliamentary democracies, and that is what out looks like. We will become a proper, functioning parliamentary democracy. And we need to recognise that only 15% of our economy is involved with exports to Europe, and yet, as members of the single market, we have a rule book that binds 100% of our businesses. And one of the first things I want to see a British government doing is giving an even break to the 5 million men and women that run small businesses in this country. And the debate this week has moved on to trade policy. Mr. Cameron, in the launch of the Conservatives' in campaign, Mr. Cameron, sleeves rolled up, said that the negotiations between the European Union and Canada to have a free trade deal, those negotiations had now taken 7 years. He used this as an argument for us remaining in. I would have thought there couldn't be a better or clearer argument actually for us leaving and negotiating our own trade policy. And it's pretty noticeable that even a country the size of Iceland, which is fewer than 1/3 people, even they have been able to negotiate their own trade deal with China. And Switzerland have got more free trade agreements across the world than we've got as members of this union. We are, ladies and gentlemen, the 5th biggest economy in the world. We are, and have for centuries been, a global trading nation, and we should set our own trade agreements with the rest of the world, and perhaps a very good place to start would be the 54 countries and 2.2 billion people that live within the Commonwealth. And for those that say that the other European states in the European Union would not wish to have a proper fair trade deal with Britain, my response is simple. Just look out of your windows. See how many German cars there are driving on the roads. See just how many Mercedes, BMW, Audis, Volkswagens. There's an owner over there, I can tell. He's gone red. But look how many German cars there are. Look how much French wine was sold at the UKIP gala dinner last night. Recognise that we are now the Eurozone's most important marketplace in the world. Don't listen to college kid politicians who've never had a job in their lives telling you what would happen to trade. Believe me, I worked in international trade for 20 years before getting into politics. And the one thing I know about global trade is it is the customer who is king, and we clearly are the customer. And what out looks like is we take back control. We do what normal countries all over the world do. We take back control of our borders, and we decide who comes to live, work, and settle in this country. And this is the number one issue in British politics. And the government, of course, realised that, which is why repeatedly, since 2010, the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, Theresa May, endlessly make promises to bring levels of net migration in Britain down to tens of thousands a year. You've heard it again and again and again. But the truth is, it is not possible, as a member of the European Union, to control this. It is not possible, as a member of the European Union, for our government to plan ahead for primary school places, for health provision, for housing, for any of our public services. And what we see, 6 years into David Cameron being Prime Minister, is immigration, net migration, still running at near record levels. And yet, if you look at the number of national insurance numbers that have been issued, you see in some cases, from some countries, it is 2 to 3 times the figure. I do not believe we're being told the truth about the numbers of people coming into this country. I believe the true figures actually would shock us. I think they would shock us. And I think we've got to recognise that actually mass migration into Britain on this scale is not good for our country. It is not good for our quality of life. It is not good for social cohesion in our societies. And our population inexorably heading towards 70 or 75 million will not make this a better, richer, or happier place to be. But as EU members, there is nothing we can do about it. And please don't think that if you vote to remain, it'll carry on as it is. Just 2 weeks ago, Bosnia applied to be a member state of the European Union. And Mrs. Merkel, the real boss of Europe, at least she was, wobbling a bit now perhaps, but Mrs. Merkel and others, including our own Prime Minister, who is one of the chief cheerleaders, they have decided they want Turkey to join the European Union within the next 5 years. And I think there's little doubt, if you ally that to the desperate problems with no sign of improvement that we're seeing in the Eurozone, the migrant crisis and everything else, if we remain members of this European Union, it is a perfectly reasonable, sane thing to say that actually our migration crisis will get worse. And beyond the argument simply about numbers and what it's doing to our quality of life, there is perhaps a bigger argument beginning to emerge. Because surely one of the first duties of a British government should be to do everything within their power to protect our people from the horrors that we saw in Paris and the indignities that we saw in Cologne, and the best and safest way for us to attempt to prevent such things is to leave the European Union and to take back control of our borders and who comes to Britain. And yet our Home Secretary, Theresa May, do you remember the speech she gave at the Conservative Party conference? She said all the things I've just said to you today. She talked about the absolute need to get net migration down. She talked about the fall in people's living standards. She talked about all the right things, and she was hailed for a brief period of time as being the new heroine of British politics. And now she says that she wants Britain to stay in the European Union and believes that Cameron's emergency brake somehow will start to deter numbers from coming to Britain. Well, given Mr. Cameron's reluctance to do public debates with anybody ever, I want to challenge the Home Secretary. I want to say to Theresa May, come on a platform or a television programme with me between now and the referendum, and let's get the truth before the British public. And the truth is actually quite straightforward. That is a British passport. Well, half a cheer. That is a British passport. You've all got one of them, but have you noticed what the first two words on it are? It says European Union. And there are 508 million people now entitled to have that passport, and they can all, if they wish, come to Britain. That is at the heart. That is at the heart of our migration problem in this country. And what we need to do is to say, we want to be part of the international community. We want to have a rational immigration policy that allows us to get skilled workers to come to Britain, people who come who haven't got criminal records, people who come and bring their own health insurance, people who come and don't qualify for benefits. But we cannot do that if we are now joint citizens with 27 other countries. And I want to, after the referendum, make this a real British passport without the words European Union. We can and we will win this referendum. I suspect many of the public will get very confused over the course of the next few months by claim and counterclaim on the economics and all of the other arguments. But ultimately, this referendum is down to one thing. Do we believe that we are good enough? Do we have the self-confidence? Do we think we're up to running our own country, our own parliament, controlling our own borders? Do we believe in Britain? Yes! Do we want our country back? Yes! Will we go out and speak to as many people as we can between now and June the 23rd to make that Independence Day. Good. Well, I said at the start that UKIP had been the key element in all of this, and indeed we had. Without us, there'd be no referendum. But whilst this referendum campaign is going on, there is another very significant event for our party and for UK politics. Thursday, May the 5th, is the British equivalent of Super Tuesday, because we have elections to the Welsh Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, to Stormont, to London, police and crime commissioners, and thousands of council seats. We also have 2 parliamentary by-elections being fought on that day. It represents for us a vast organisational task, but I'm pretty optimistic. I'm certainly optimistic here in Wales that we're going to do very well and make a breakthrough. And indeed, I was invited down by Carwyn Jones, the Welsh First Minister, to do a head-to-head debate with him. And I realised after that, by the way, Carwyn Jones, who thinks that the steel industry is having a tough time because of the strength of the pound. I know, it's been a bear market since July 2014, but there we are. But I realised, listening to Carwyn Jones, that actually they're not prepared to admit their impotence to the people of Wales. Not prepared to admit that when it comes to the mass dumping of Chinese steel on the world markets, that they're not able, they can't lift a finger, either in Cardiff or indeed the British government in London, to help those beleaguered steelworkers. And I realise that Labour, under Jeremy Corbyn, are probably now even more out of touch with old Labour voters than they were in that general election last year. And I think that certainly in Wales and London and Scotland, we will once again do what we did in the general election. We will surprise the commentators by just how many votes we take from the Labour Party. I genuinely believe and think that UKIP will win seats in all 4 of those assemblies and parliaments, and in doing that, we'll be the only party in the United Kingdom that can do it. So that's my prediction. We'll win seats in all 4 of those chambers. And by doing that, we will also add and help our national referendum campaign, because there'll be more elected officials from UKIP able to go on local and regional media to make the pro-British, anti-EU argument. It has been, for me, a pretty extraordinary 20-year journey. I can't pretend that it's all been plain sailing. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our big dipper moments in UKIP. But I think that together, what we've managed to achieve is truly historic, in the sense that we've forced our political class into giving us this referendum that they never wanted us to have. And I shall die a happy man, whenever that is, if we win that referendum on June the 23rd. And I believe we can do it, and I believe we will do it, and I will give it everything I've got between now and that day to make sure that we do win. And I thank you for your support. Thank you.